On your website, I was reading a little bit about you had an upbringing of a religious upbringing.
Mhm.
And so I'm really curious, how do you reconcile both being having that religious background, Christian, and I don't know if I saw what religion it was, but
It was
between
Christian.
it was Christian, okay, being a Christian because you still have a strong faith, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so you being a Christian and a medium, given these two paths are basically seen as conflicting, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I can. So, like I said, I've had my gifts since I was born. I was born with them, but being that my family was very religious, and these gifts run in my family. My mother was very gifted. My father was also gifted. My grandmother was very gifted. She would always tell me stories about seeing angels. Um,
Okay.
and 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 my grandfather was at one time he was a minister also, and so grew up in a very extremely conservative church.
Oh, wow.
um yes, very extremely conservative. And my mom always said, well, just I would tell my mom, like, I see things, I hear things, I know things. And he would say, well, just leave it alone, just leave it alone. And I said, okay, okay, fine. So I mostly didn't talk about it, but I always listened to my gut, and I always listened to the little voice I heard in my head telling me, kind of guiding me. um and so when I did finally start to embrace my gifts, so what happened was my husband passed away. My husband passed away. And up until this time, I mean, I was in women's ministry for a few years. I ran the MOPS group at my church.
Oh, okay.
I was one of the directors. I was one of the co-directors for the MOPS group. So I was in women's ministry probably about 6 years. Um, and I always felt very connected with God and Jesus.
Okay.
And and even when I was running the MOPS group, we had to do a devotional in the morning, and I
Right.
would have to get up and talk. And I would sit at my computer the night before and try to write what I was going to say. And I couldn't, and I was always blank slate. And I would just pray, okay, God, let, I'm just gonna go up there tomorrow, and you just tell me what you want me to say. And then I would get up in the morning, and I'd go get in front of there's like 60 something women in our group.
Wow, that
And
was a
I'd get
big
up
one.
there, and I would just start. Yes, and I would just start talking, and I would just talk about how God in my life, and how he's helped me with, my family, my kids, being a mom. And I would, and I never knew, I could never prepare ahead of time. I would just say, okay, God, show me what you want me to,
Right.
tell me what you want me to say. And it would always come through. And everybody would tell me, wow, that was really good, or I needed to hear that. And so I
Right.
always felt that very close connection with God and Jesus. And so my husband got sick in 2019, and
Sorry to
and
hear
it's like,
that.
thank you. And I would have dreams that would come true. I would always know things. I remember one time me and my husband were going through this rough patch, and I was like praying, God, you know, um, he was telling me he was like he wanted to go camping by himself. He's like, I just want to go camp by myself. And I was like, yeah, right, you're not going camping by yourself. And he's like, I just need to get away. And I'm thinking, no, he's never gonna come back. So I'm like, no, you're not gonna go. And he was really upset. And I prayed. I said, okay, God, he want tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. He wants to go camping. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know what to do. So me and him, we had went to the gym together, and I was listening to a Christian station, and the DJ comes on, and she says, sometimes men just need to get away, and they need to go camping. They need to go by themselves out into the woods and just be at one with God. And I was like, okay, fine. I hear you.
Right.
I hear you, God. So every time I would pray and ask God for something, I would get an answer. Most of the time, I would get an answer. A song would come on, or, somebody on the radio would say something that was exactly what I had asked, stuff like that. So I always felt very connected. Um, and then my husband got sick in 2019, and if and it didn't look good. He had a really rare disease, and it was by the time you're diagnosed with it, you have like a 10% chance of surviving the
Oh,
next
wow.
6 months. So it wasn't good.
Right.
And I prayed a lot, and a few days. So one day I go to take a shower, and I had this vision of my husband. I'm in the shower and I see him walk in and step into the shower with me, and he has a big smile on his face. And when I saw that, I knew in my heart that he was never going to shower with me again.
Right, right.
And I just started crying. I was crying, crying in the shower, and I pulled myself together, and and I I went downstairs and I saw him, and and as soon as I saw him, I started crying again. He goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm just afraid you're never going to shower with me again." He says, "No, I will." Well, that night he went into cardiogenic shock, and I had to call the ambulance, and then he passed away 3 days later.
Wow.
And I feel it was his soul letting me know that he was going to be going soon. And so he passed away 3 days later. The night he passed, he had told me he did not want to be sick. He was like, if they can't make me better, I'd rather just go. And he
Okay.
said, and he had peace about his passing. He said, I know I'm going to go to heaven. You know, I, I have a relationship with God and Jesus. I know I'm going to go to heaven. I know I'm going to be okay. I know you guys will be okay. And he's like, it'll be okay. And, so even the day he passed, I just said, God, I gave it up to God. Like, God, I want him here, but if you have to take him, like, that I understand. And he passed that night, and
Yeah. Sorry.
it was really hard. It was devastating, but even the night he passed away, I saw him walking out of the hospital with me. And
Okay.
I thought maybe and I see everything kind of inside my mind.
Right.
It's almost like an overlay in my field of vision. So like if you put your hand in front of your face, but you don't look at your hand, you look past it. That's kind of how I
Right.
see things.
Yep.
I saw him walking with me, in his hospital gown next to me out of the ICU. And I thought maybe I was in shock. I thought, because I would always go with him to the hospital and stay there with him. It was right before COVID. So I was fortunate enough that I got to stay with him.
Right.
And then he came home, and I was talking to my mom, and I had a picture of him on my phone. Somehow my phone had went into my gallery and pulled up a picture of him smiling at me while I was talking on the phone. And
Wow.
I knew it was him letting me know he was okay.
Right.
And as the days went, I could feel him. I could, if you've ever been married for a long time, when your spouse is in the room, like you can feel his energy, right? And
Right.
so I could still feel his energy. I could smell him. I could sometimes I would see him like out of the corner of my eye, or I'd kind of see him with a big smile on his face. He would show me things. Like if I couldn't find something, I'd be like, Jesse, where is that thing? And then I would see where it was, exactly where it was in my head. He picked out the flowers for his funeral.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he picked out we went to go order flowers, and I wanted to get red flowers, but I kept seeing red and white roses in my head. And I was like, why do I keep seeing red and white roses? I don't want that. So but when I went to order, I ordered red and white because I couldn't stop seeing red and white. So I
Right.
ordered the red and white, and then I went back the next day because I'm like, I didn't want red and white. I wanted red. Why did I order those? So I went back and I ordered the red. And when they delivered them, they were red and white.
Wow.
I was so sad. And I never told anybody that story. I had never told anybody that story. But a year later, on the anniversary of his passing, a friend of mine, she said, "Oh, let me make dinner for you guys. We were gonna get together." And she says, let me make dinner for you and your family. I said, okay. And she came over and she brought red and white flowers. And she didn't know
Oh,
the story about the red and white roses, but she brought red and white flowers. And I knew it was another sign from my husband letting me know that he's still, he was still around.
right.
And
Right. So how do
yeah,
you,
and so what, so how do I reconcile that? I guess I haven't answered
yeah,
that
well,
question, huh?
because for that, and it's a beautiful story, and I really appreciate you sharing it with us. That's a very personal story as well. And I know it'll help others. And with that, how do you reconcile between it being divine intervention and your gift, which could both be,
Well,
integrated?
my gift is divine intervention. And so once I started embracing my gifts, I was really conflicted. I was really conflicted, and I really struggled because I'd always been told to stay away from this. But I kept getting all these messages, and they were just so full of love. Like the love I felt in these messages was overwhelming. And I thought, well, how can that be wrong? It was bringing so much healing to people because not only was it my husband coming through, but other people were coming through. And the messages were full of so much love and healing. And finally I said, I prayed. I would pray, God, if this is not from you, just take it away from me. Take it away, block it. I don't want it. I don't want to do anything that you don't want me to do. And it just kept getting stronger and stronger. And
Okay.
then finally I finally said, okay, God, if this is what you want me to do, then I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you and I'm going to walk in faith that this is what you want me to do. And a few days later, and I just kept hearing in my head, faith over fear.
Okay.
And then a few days later, a friend of mine, I think my birthday had been recent, and she said, "Oh, I got you a bracelet." And I said, "Oh, okay." And she gave it to me, and it said faith over fear. And it was kind of confirmation for me,
And she
but I
didn't
was still,
know that that was your little catch line then.
no, she didn't know. So I wear it, and I wear it now I have this bracelet, and it says faith over fear. Um, because I've chosen to walk in faith. And until God tells me something different, then, I'm going to be faithful. And the work I do, it's to glorify God.
Okay.
I do it for his glory. And so I was still kind of not doing it in public. I hadn't come out into public. And one day I heard God saying, Rachel, you're not honoring me by hiding the gifts I've given to you. I
Wow.
just kept getting this feeling like I've given you these gifts for a reason. You're not honoring me by hiding them. And so I felt called to come out into the public and I didn't want to. I was like, no, I'm going to lose friends. It's going to be terrible. But I had to. I just kept
Okay.
feeling that nudge. No, you need to come out. And so
Okay.
I did. And I decided to, I mean, and in the Bible talks about spiritual gifts,
Okay.
talks about spiritual gifts, different gifts, different spiritual gifts. And so I just said, okay, fine, I'll just walk in faith. And that's what I've done. That's what I've chosen to do. And just trust in
Right.
God.
Right. Wow. That partially gave me chills, just so you know. You know, it's very mature and advanced thinking that you can bring the two together and to know that this isn't in conflict with God and religion. This is God giving you, like you said, the gifts, and also He wants you to bring them out into the public. So maybe you can do part of His work that some people can't see, and you give them some comfort while you're using the gifts through Him.
One, and we bring faith also. We
Right,
bring faith that there's something bigger than what we can see in front of us.
right, right.
And yeah, and it is a really beautiful thing. Oh my, I was gonna say something, my mind went blank.
Oh, that happens to me all